Burnley, Lancashire, 1963. Elsie Hartley had 1 shilling and 4pence left until Friday. 2 grandchildren at the table, corner shop 3 streets away. No car, no freezer. She did not panic. By 6:30, there was a real meal on that table. Hot, filling, made from almost nothing. Less than 10 minutes from cold pan to plate. Number 11 on this list was so common in British pensioner households that the Women's Institute included it in 3 separate regional pamphlets. Nobody teaches it now. Number 19 costs less than 40 pence today and beats every ready meal on the market for protein per penny. And number 4 is exactly what Elsie made that Tuesday evening. The children ate every last bit. If your grandmother fed you well on almost nothing and you never asked how, this list is the answer. Subscribe before we begin, because what follows is what they stopped teaching. Entry 25. Bread and dripping with brown sauce. Nobody called it a meal. That was the point. Thick white bread, cold beef dripping straight from the jar, a stripe of Yorkshire brown sauce across the top. Done. The dripping is pale and firm from the fridge. The bread tears rather than cuts. The sauce hits the back of the throat, salt and vinegar, and something almost smoky. 1 slice held a working man for 3 hours. For a pensioner eating alone, it costs under 30 pence and takes 2 minutes. The same calories in a supermarket sandwich meal deal costs £3.75. It also contains seed oils, emulsifiers, and 4 types of preservative your grandmother could not have named and would not have touched. She knew what food was for. Fuel first, everything else second. Entry 24. Leek and potato soup. 2 leeks, 2 potatoes, a stock cube, water. That is the entire list. Slice the leeks and potato thin. Sweat them in a little butter for 3 minutes. Add boiled water and a stock cube. Blitz or leave chunky. Ready in 8 minutes from a cold pan. The soup is pale green and faintly sweet. The leek softens until it almost disappears. The potato thickens it without a drop of cream. It fills a stomach for 4 hours and costs under 50 pence. The Women's Institute included this exact recipe in their 1958 budget cooking pamphlet. They described it as the single most economical hot meal a woman could make for herself alone. A supermarket carton of leek and potato soup costs £1.85. It is also worse. Entry 23. Sardines on toast with malt vinegar. The tin costs less than £1. Everything else is already in the kitchen. Sardines in brine. 2 slices of toast, malt vinegar, white pepper if you have it. Toast the bread, drain the tin, lay the sardines on whole, do not mash them. Splash vinegar over the top. Eat immediately while the toast is still crisp underneath. You have about 90 seconds before it softens. Do not waste them. The skin crisps slightly from the hot toast. The vinegar cuts the oil, salt and acid, and something almost mineral. The Ministry of Food recommended tinned sardines throughout the entire post-war period. More omega-3 per gram than salmon. More calcium per serving than a glass of milk. An omega-3 supplement capsule costs 30 pence a day. The sardines deliver 12 times the dose, and they fill you up. Between 1960 and 1980, the average British pensioner spent 14 shillings a week on food. Adjusted for today, that is roughly £10.50. During that same period, diet-related illness in the over 65 population was lower than at any point since. The 14-shilling diet was built on meals exactly like these. When the supermarket replaced the corner shop and the ready meal replaced the 10-minute recipe, the food budget doubled. The health outcomes worsened. The Women's Institute documented this in their 1978 annual report. Their conclusion was blunt. Convenience had replaced competence. They were right. Nobody listened. Entry 22. Egg on toast, with the yolk broken in the pan. Nobody taught this in a cookery school. That is exactly why it works. Butter in a cold pan, heat slowly, crack the egg. Break the yolk immediately with the spatula and let it spread flat. 2 minutes. On toast, salt, done. The yolk sets pale gold, slightly crisp at the edges. No rubbery whites, no runny mess. It is the egg prepared the way an experienced woman prepares it when she is cooking for herself alone. 1 egg, 6 grams of complete protein. Every fat-soluble vitamin in the human diet. 25 pence. A protein shake from a health food shop costs £2.40 per serving and has an inferior amino acid profile. It also has 12 ingredients, most of them unpronounceable. She did not need a label. She needed a pan and a low flame. Entry 21. Cold leftover potatoes, fried in dripping. Every kitchen she ever ran obeyed the same law. Nothing goes in the bin. Yesterday's boiled potatoes, a spoonful of dripping, salt, optional onion if one is going soft in the rack. Slice the potatoes thick. Dripping in a really hot pan. Potatoes in. Do not touch them for 3 minutes. Let the crust form underneath. Turn once. 3 more minutes. Done in 7. The outside shatters when you press a fork in. The inside is still soft and slightly floury. The dripping gives it a depth that vegetable oils simply cannot replicate. Cold potatoes develop resistant starch overnight. Resistant starch feeds gut bacteria and stabilizes blood sugar. Your grandmother did not know the science. She knew the meal. A bag of supermarket frozen hash browns costs £1.80. Not better, just easier for someone else to sell you. Entry 20. Cheese and onion on toast under the grill. This one built entire childhoods. Strong cheddar, raw white onion, sliced thin, white bread, a splash of Worcestershire sauce, if the bottle is within reach. Bread under the grill on one side. Flip it. Layer the raw onion first. The heat will soften it. Grate the cheddar on top. Back under the grill until it blisters and goes brown at the edges. Those brown edges are not optional. The onion sweetens under the heat. The cheese bubbles. The bread is crisp on the bottom and soft in the middle. There is a moment, about 40 seconds before it is ready, when the whole kitchen smells exactly like her house. The Women's Institute rated this among the top 5 budget suppers in their 1961 Home Management Guide. 60 pence, 8 minutes. No washing up worth mentioning. Some things were already perfect. Entry 19. Tinned tomatoes on toast with dried herbs. They called it student food. They called it immigrant food. They were wrong on both counts. 1 tin of plum tomatoes, 2 slices of toast, dried oregano, salt. That is it. Tip the tin into a small pan. Crush the tomatoes with a spoon. High heat for 4 minutes until thick. Add the herbs and salt. On toast, done. The reduction concentrates all the sweetness. The herbs bloom in the heat. The whole thing smells like a proper kitchen, not a microwave. Tinned tomatoes have higher lycopene concentrations than fresh. Lycopene is directly linked to reduced cardiovascular risk. The NHS knew this. When convenience foods overtook British kitchens in the 70s and 80s, tinned tomato cookery was quietly repositioned as inferior. That repositioning made the food industry a great deal of money. It cost pensioners a great deal of health. 40 pence, 4 minutes. Nutritionally serious. Entry 18. Boiled egg with soldiers. She made this for you first. Then she made it for herself for the next 20 years. Same pan, same egg cup. Same 4 minutes. You did not know that. Now you do. Cold water. Egg in. Bring to the boil. Exactly 4 minutes from the boil. Cold water straight after to stop the cooking. Into the egg cup. Top off. Soldiers in. The white is fully set. The yolk is thick and warm and not quite solid. The butter on the toast melts the moment it dips in. Complete protein. Slow-release carbohydrate. Enough fat to carry the meal for 3 hours. 30 pence total. The softest thing a pair of hands can produce in under 10 minutes. And she made it alone, quietly, long after you had stopped coming round. Entry 17. Oxtail soup with bread. Open the tin. Do not let it boil. That is the entire skill set required. Heinz oxtail soup into a pan. Medium heat. Stir slowly. Pour into a deep bowl the moment it steams. 1 thick slice of bread on the side, not in the soup. Thick, dark, and slightly sticky. The fat floats to the surface in small amber circles. The bread tears rather than cuts. This is the smell of a cold evening made bearable. Genuine bone stock delivers collagen peptides and natural gelatin. Joint health, gut lining, slow satiety. The supplement industry eventually noticed, rebranded the same compounds, and began selling them at £30 a bottle. Then Heinz reformulated. Less bone stock, more flavoring agents. The original contained genuinely therapeutic levels of collagen. The new one does not. Nobody announced the change. Nobody asked permission. £1.10, still worth it. Barely. In 1977, the McGovern Report told the Western world to eat less fat and more carbohydrate. British dietary guidelines followed within 3 years. The report was based on selective data. It was shaped by the grain and sugar industries. The result was that British pensioners who had eaten dripping, herrings, eggs and sardines for 60 years were told to stop. The generation that changed its diet on those guidelines was the first to face epidemic rates of type 2 diabetes and metabolic disease. The meals those pensioners had been eating were not the problem, they were the solution, and they were taken away. If this channel is new to you, subscribe now. We cover the food history that the ready meal industry would genuinely prefer you never find. Entry 16. Cold chicken leg with pickle and bread. The Sunday roast already paid for Monday's dinner. She knew that before she put the bird in the oven. Pull the cold leg from the carcass. Bread. A heavy spoon of Branston pickle. That is the recipe. There is no other recipe. Cold fat has a different texture to hot fat. Denser, more satisfying. The skin no longer crisps, but it chews well. The pickle cuts through everything with a sharpness that is almost cleansing. The National Trust Rural Life Archive records this exact meal as the standard Monday lunch of rural British women from the 1940s through the 70s. Not written down, not taught formally, passed hand to hand through kitchens that understood one law above all others. The cost cost of Monday's dinner is the cost of Sunday's roast, already paid. That is not frugality. That is intelligence so basic it should not need explaining. Entry 15. Fried bread with tinned mushrooms. This is the meal that food writers forgot on purpose. 1 or 2 slices of white bread fried in butter until properly golden, not pale, not lightly colored, golden, with dark edges that catch the fat and go slightly nutty. Tinned button mushrooms drained and warmed in the same pan for 90 seconds, on top of the bread. The bread absorbs the butter until it is almost crisp all the way through, the mushrooms brown at the edges in the residual fat. Umami and salt and something that tastes inexplicably like Sunday morning. Tinned mushrooms retain ergosterol, a direct precursor to vitamin D. Butter provides fat-soluble vitamin A. Together they form one of the most nutritionally efficient 50-pence meals in the British repertoire. Food writers rediscovered fried bread recently and called it retro. She never stopped making it. She did not need a trend to tell her it worked. Entry 14. Potted meat sandwich. Medieval British food technology, still in corner shops, almost entirely ignored. Potted meat spread thick on fresh white bread, second slice on top, cut on the diagonal. That is the whole recipe, unchanged since Eliza Acton described it in 1845. Dense, dark, slightly spiced, with a chew that a paste could never have. The bread has to be fresh, or the whole thing loses its structure. Do not use yesterday's loaf for this one. High protein, high fat, heme iron in its most bioavailable form. 2 sandwiches from 1 jar. Under 2 minutes total. Potted meat did not decline because something better replaced it. It declined because supermarkets could not refrigerate it cheaply enough to make the margins work. The product was fine. The supply chain was the problem. Your grandmother bought it from the butcher on a Friday, and it never once let her down. Entry 13. Tinned pilchards in tomato sauce on toast. The Cornish never called this a budget meal. They called it dinner. 1 tin of pilchards in tomato sauce, 2 slices of toast, white pepper if it is within reach. Toast the bread, open the tin, pilchards on top, sauce and all. Eat while hot. The sauce soaks into the toast in exactly the right way, and not a drop gets wasted. The tomato sauce is thick and slightly sweet. The pilchards are denser than sardines, flakier, less oily. Together they taste like something that should not work as well as it does. More calcium per gram than sardines. Lycopene from the tomato sauce. One of the highest value 10-minute meals in the entire British repertoire, hiding inside a tin that costs under £1. Devon and Cornwall fishing communities ate this for generations. Nobody marketed it, nobody needed to. Entry 12. Pea soup from the packet, 8 minutes, 35 pence. No decision-making required. For a pensioner eating alone at the end of a long day, that combination is not a small thing. Bachelors split pea soup into a pan, measured boiling water in. Stir for 5 minutes on medium heat. Add a ham stock cube if one is available. Done. Thick and pale gold and slightly grainy in the best possible way. A faint smokiness from the ham flavoring, the kind of warmth that starts in the stomach and spreads outward slowly. Split peas are among the highest protein plant foods available in Britain. High fiber, low glycemic index, genuinely sustaining. The Bachelor's brand developed this product specifically for women living alone after the Second World War. That origin story has been quietly removed from their marketing materials. The soup remains. The story was inconvenient for the rebrand. Entry 11. Welsh rarebit. The Women's Institute did not include this in their 1953 economy cooking bulletin because it was comforting. They included it because they had done the mathematics, and it worked. Strong Welsh cheddar grated into a pan over low heat, a splash of Worcestershire sauce, a scrape of English mustard. Stir until molten and smooth, never boiled. Spread onto thick toast. Under the grill for 90 seconds until the edges go brown. Not pale, brown. Those edges are the whole point. The mustard hides behind everything until the second bite. The Worcestershire sauce is salt and anchovies and something ancient. The cheese sauce is thick and glossy and coats the toast completely. 70 pence. Under 10 minutes. The National Museum of Wales Oral History Project found this was the single most cited comfort food among elderly Welsh respondents, including those who had lived abroad for decades. Distance does not dim it. A study published in The Lancet in 2019 examined dietary patterns across 14 European countries from 1950 to 2000. The finding was uncomfortable for a great many people in the food industry. Traditional working-class British meals from the pre-convenience era outperformed Mediterranean diets for all-cause mortality in the over 65 population. The researchers pointed to protein quality, dietary fat composition, and near-zero levels of ultra-processed ingredients. The study received almost no mainstream coverage. The ready meal industry spent £12 billion on marketing in the year it was published. Your grandmother's 10-minute dinner was not a compromise. It was the optimal solution. The science caught up with what she already knew. The supermarket has not, and has no intention of doing so. Entry 10. Jacket potato from the range. A single potato. The most honest meal in the British repertoire. One large floury potato, pricked with a fork, rubbed with salt, high oven until the skin tightens and goes slightly dark. 7 minutes in the microwave if time is short, turned once. 2 minutes resting, then push your thumbs in and open it immediately while the steam is still rising. Butter goes in while it is hot enough to melt instantly. Salt pulls the steam upward. The smell is the smell of British winter, unchanged since the Industrial Revolution. More potassium than a banana, significant vitamin C, enough slow carbohydrate to sustain a pensioner for 4 to 5 hours. 20 pence for the potato. The Ministry of Agriculture promoted the baking potato throughout the entire post-war period as the most nutritionally efficient food a person could grow on British soil. They were right then, nothing has changed. Entry 9. Scrambled eggs with proper cream. The only rule that matters with scrambled eggs is low heat. Everything else is decoration. 2 eggs and a tablespoon of cream into a cold pan with butter. Medium-low heat. Stir constantly with a wooden spoon. Take the pan off before they look done. They finish themselves in the residual heat. 30 seconds of impatience is the difference between scrambled eggs and rubber. Soft, almost wet, pale yellow. They fold rather than break. The cream gives a richness that milk simply cannot replicate. On toast, the whole meal takes 8 minutes and costs under 50 pence. Farm households across rural Britain kept this method alive through the 50s and 60s because it worked every time without fail. Cordon bleu recipe books from that same era describe this exact technique. Your grandmother's version was better than most restaurant versions today. She just never sent a bill. Entry 8. Herrings in oatmeal. This is the national dish of the Scottish working class. Not haggis. This. Fresh herring fillets pressed firmly into medium oatmeal on both sides. Butter in a hot pan. 3 minutes each side. The oatmeal coats the fish and stays on. Do not shake it off. The oatmeal crisps into a proper crust. The herring underneath stays moist and oily. It smells powerful before it is cooked. Once done, it smells different entirely, less aggressive, more savory, almost nutty where the butter has caught the edges. Herring has the highest natural omega-3 content of any fish readily available in Britain. The oatmeal coating provides soluble fiber that binds with the fish oil and slows absorption into the bloodstream. Nutritional engineering that predates the word nutrition by several centuries. Scottish fishing communities were not eating it because they had no other choice. They were eating it because nothing else came close. Entry 7. Dripping toast. Do not skip the jelly at the bottom of the jar. That is where everything worth having lives. Toast under a high grill until dark in patches. While it is still hot, scrape through the white fat to reach the dark jelly underneath. Spread the jelly first, fat on top, salt while still warm. That dark jelly is reduced beef stock, pure gelatin, pure savory depth. The supplement industry sells the same compounds in capsules at £25 a jar. The dripping jar cost nothing. It was the residue of Sunday's roast, salt and fat and deep beef and the slight bitterness of the dark toast underneath. It does not taste like a snack. It tastes like a meal. The National Food Survey recorded dripping as a primary cooking fat in British working-class households through 1975. Its decline maps precisely onto the rise in cardiovascular disease rates, not the fall. Entry 6. Bubble and squeak. Monday existed so that Sunday's leftovers could become something better than Sunday. Cold mashed potato and leftover cooked cabbage or sprouts combined in a bowl, seasoned well, pressed into a flat cake in a buttered pan. Do not move it for 4 minutes. A proper crust forms underneath, darker than looks right, and exactly right. Flip it. 4 more minutes. Done. The outside shatters when a fork goes in. The inside is soft and faintly sweet from the cabbage, salt and fat, and the particular taste of a kitchen that has never thrown anything edible away. Cold potato develops resistant starch overnight. Cooked cabbage concentrates glucosinolates associated with cancer prevention. The Maillard reaction at the crust creates antioxidant compounds that do not exist in the raw ingredients. The cooking process that sounds like it is destroying the nutrition is quietly enhancing it. She knew it tasted better than yesterday. The science knows why. Entry 5. Cheese and pickle doorstep. This built more working lunches than any meal in British history, and it never needed improving. 2 slices of white bread, thick enough to deserve the name doorstep. Strong farmhouse cheddar, heavy enough to feel the weight of it. Branston pickles spread to every edge, second slice on top. That is the recipe. It has always been the recipe. The cheese is sharp and slightly crumbly. The pickle is dark and sweet and faintly sticky. The bread holds both without falling apart for longer than it takes to eat it. Farmhouse cheddar, aged 12 months, contains significantly more conjugated linoleic acid than the mild processed block that dominates supermarket shelves today. Before supermarkets gradually shifted British taste toward cheaper, blander cheese, what your grandmother bought from the counter was nutritionally superior in every measurable way. The product did not improve. The profit margin did. 55 pence, 2 minutes. Perfect since 1952. Entry 4. Potato hash with a fried egg. This is what Elsie made in Burnley in 1963. 1 shilling and 4 pence left until Friday. 2 grandchildren at the table. This is the meal. Cold potato diced without peeling. Onion chopped fine. Any scrap of leftover cooked meat, whatever is in the refrigerator. Dripping in a hot pan. Everything in at once. High heat. Do not stir for 3 minutes. Let it catch and darken underneath. Stir once. Let it catch again. Fried egg on top. 9 minutes total. Dark at the edges and soft in the middle. The onion sweetens in the fat. The egg yolk runs into the hash when broken. It smells like competence, like a woman who knows exactly what she is doing with what she has. The Ministry of Food included potato hash in their standard wartime pamphlet on feeding a family on minimal ration. It remained in circulation for 30 years after rationing ended. That is not sentimentality, that is a result. Entry 3. Bloater paste on toast. Victorian sailors carried it. Edwardian fishermen's wives made it fresh each week. Somewhere between then and now, the food industry decided it was embarrassing. They were wrong. Bloater paste is smoked herring reduced and blended with butter. It comes in a small jar. It costs under £2 and makes 10 meals. Spread it immediately onto hot toast while the surface is still warm enough to bloom the flavor. Cold, it is merely acceptable. Hot, it is extraordinary. Smoky and deeply savory and faintly sweet from the cure. It coats the tongue. The toast provides just enough resistance. Together they taste like the Norfolk coast in 1948. Smoked herring paste delivers omega-3, vitamin D, and B12 in a form that requires no cooking and keeps for months. It did not decline because something better arrived. The smoked fish industry lobbied for fresh. The paste had no lobby. That is the whole story. Entry 2. Bread pudding. Cold slice. She made it on Sunday. She ate it all week. The same tin, getting lighter. The same slice, a little smaller each day. Alone, efficient, completely in control of her own kitchen. Stale bread soaked in milk, dried fruit, mixed spice. 1 egg, baked until dark and dense, left to cool completely. Stored cold and sliced as needed throughout the week. Serve it at room temperature. No heating required. The dish has already done all the work. Cold, it is better than warm. The fruit rehydrates fully overnight, and the spice deepens into something almost caramelized. Under 20 pence per thick slice. Complete protein from the egg, calcium from the milk, iron from the dried fruit. The Ministry of Food promoted bread pudding throughout the war as a zero-waste meal, requiring minimal resources. After the war, the food industry spent 40 years teaching Britain that fresh was always better than preserved. Bread pudding is evidence that they were lying. Entry 1. A pot of tea and whatever was in the larder. This is not a recipe. It is something more important than that. Put the kettle on first. Always the kettle first. Then stand at the larder door for 30 seconds and look at what is there. Really look. Then make something from it. Sit down. Eat it slowly. Every Women's Institute cookbook from 1920 to 1980 opens with a version of the same instruction. Know your larder before you plan your meal, not the other way around. The Ministry of Food repeated it in every wartime pamphlet. It was the foundational skill of British domestic life for 200 years. The food industry dismantled it deliberately. They could not sell you the skill. They could only profit from its absence. The average British household throws away £60 of food every month. The average meal kit subscription costs £45 a week. Neither figure existed in 1963. Neither figure is an accident. She never stood in front of a full refrigerator and said there was nothing to eat. She knew how to look at what she had and see what it could become. That is not a cooking skill. That is a life skill, and it has been replaced by a subscription service. Pick 3, just 3. Try the leek and potato soup on Monday. Make the scrambled eggs on Wednesday. On Friday evening, open a tin of pilchards, make 2 slices of toast, and eat it standing at the kitchen counter while it is still hot. I made number 4 last week. A scrape of leftover chicken, 2 cold potatoes from Sunday, half an onion going soft in the rack. 9 minutes. Fed 2 people. Cost almost nothing. I have not bought a ready meal since. Tell me in the comments which meal on this list your grandmother actually made. Not your favorite from the list. The one she made. I want to know where in Britain you are from and what she put on the table when the money was nearly gone. Here is the thing about every single meal on this list. None of them required a recipe card. None required a supermarket trip. None took more than 10 minutes or cost more than a shilling in real money. They required knowledge, the kind that lives in hands, not books, that passes through kitchens, not cookery schools. We spent 70 years being told that food should be convenient, pre-packaged, and purchased from someone who profits from our dependence. Elsie Hartley in Burnley knew better in 1963. She always did. Her kitchen is still open. Walk back in. Subscribe if this list gave you something back. Leave a comment with the meal she made on a Friday when the money had nearly run out. We will be back next week with another list she would have known by heart.